There's a reason you're here today. Some of you have been lied to, betrayed, backstabbed, and disrespected. And let me tell you something, God saw it all. He saw every deception, every insult, every knife in your back, and he didn't blink. Why? Because he's got a plan bigger than your pain. You see, we live in a world where people will take advantage of your kindness, mistake your patience for weakness, and think they got away with hurting you. But God doesn't operate on human time. You may not see immediate payback, but rest assured, divine justice doesn't fail. Vengeance belongs to him. And when he moves, he doesn't just settle scores, he turns the tables. The people who thought they were burying you were actually planning you. They didn't realize that their betrayal was the setup for your breakthrough. Let me make this clear. Every great leader, every strong warrior, every person of destiny has been through betrayal. It's a test. And if you let it break you, you fail. If you let it fuel you, you rise. Think about Joseph. His own brothers sold him out, threw him in a pit, and left him for dead. But did he stay in the pit? No. He ended up ruling the very land he was sent to as a slave. Why? Because what others meant for evil, God flipped for good. You want to win in life? You want to succeed? Then stop wasting energy on revenge. Stop letting bitterness eat you alive. Forgive. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. You have places to go, things to achieve, and enemies to prove wrong, not with hate, but with undeniable success. The best revenge is elevation. While they're watching, hoping to see you stumble, let them watch you soar. Let them watch as God turns your wounds into wisdom, your pain into power, and your setbacks into setups. Stay focused, stay faithful, and let God handle the rest. Because when he deals with those who hurt you, he doesn't just make things right. He makes them regret ever messing with you in the first place. God sees everything. Let me tell you something. Nothing escapes the eyes of God. Nothing. Every tear you've shed, every injustice you faced, every time someone disrespected, betrayed, or undermined you, he saw it all. Not only did he see it, but he also took note. Some of you are sitting here today thinking, does God even care? Why would he let this happen to me? Let me tell you, God is not blind, and he is not absent. He is not indifferent to your suffering, and he is not ignoring what people have done to you. In fact, he's more aware of it than you are. He sees the motives behind their actions. He sees the deceit behind their words. And he sees the pain you carry deep inside that no one else knows about. Think about this. When someone wrongs you, you feel the sting of it in that moment. Maybe for days, weeks, or even years. But God, now, he doesn't just see the action. He sees the full picture. He sees the betrayal before it even happens. He sees the lies before they are told. He sees the manipulation before it unfolds. And because he sees it all, he is already 10 steps ahead of those who think they can hurt you and get away with it. Now, here's where most people get it wrong. When someone does us wrong, our natural reaction is to retaliate. We want justice, and we want it now. We want to expose them, call them out, make them pay for what they did. But that's not how God operates. God works in a way that man cannot comprehend. While we're focused on the immediate damage, he's focused on the ultimate outcome. While we're thinking about how to fix the situation, he's already orchestrating a divine response that is bigger than anything we could imagine. Think about David. Before he became king, he was relentlessly hunted by Saul, a man who was jealous of him, envious of his anointing, and determined to destroy him. Saul threw spears at him, chased him into the wilderness, and did everything in his power to wipe him out. But did David retaliate? No. He knew that God saw everything. He knew that if he tried to take matters into his own hands, he would only make things worse. Instead, he trusted that God would deal with Saul in his own time. And what happened? Saul destroyed himself. David didn't have to lift a finger. That's what happens when you trust that God sees everything. You don't have to fight battles that aren't yours to fight. You don't have to waste your energy trying to make people see the truth. You don't have to sit around plotting revenge. Because if God sees everything, that means he sees the people who have lied about you, the ones who have tried to sabotage you, the ones who have used you, and the ones who have smiled in your face while secretly hoping for your downfall. And believe me, he will handle them. But here's the key. You have to let go of the need to see it happen on your timeline. Some of you are wondering why God hasn't dealt with those who hurt you yet. You're looking at their lives, and they seem to be doing fine. They seem to be thriving while you're still struggling. And it's frustrating, isn't it? But understand this. Just because you don't see justice happening doesn't mean it's not coming. God is patient, but he is also just. And when he moves in a way that no one can deny. The very people who thought they could get away with hurting you will one day find themselves in a place where they have to answer for what they've done. And by that time, you'll be so far ahead, so blessed, and so elevated that their downfall won't even matter to you anymore. So what do you do in the meantime? You trust, you keep your head high, you stay focused on what God has called you to do. You don't let bitterness take root in your heart. You don't let anger consume your mind. You don't waste your time looking back at the people who tried to break you. Because the moment you shift your focus to them, you lose sight of where God is trying to take you. Listen to me. God sees it all. And because he sees it all, he will deal with it all. Not in your time, not in your way, but in his perfect and undeniable power. Hold your peace, stay in your lane, and watch as he turns everything meant to hurt you into the very thing that launches you forward. Vengeance belongs to God. Let's get one thing straight. Revenge is not your job. It never was, and it never will be. Don't care who hurt you, who betrayed you, who lied about you, or who tried to destroy you. God says, vengeance is mine. I will repay. And when he says he'll handle it, you better believe he means it. The problem is, most people don't trust that. Most people want to take matters into their own hands. They want to strike back, expose the wrongdoers, humiliate the betrayers, and make their enemies feel the same pain they felt. And I get it. When you've been wrong, the first instinct is to fight back. You want to prove your worth. You want to defend your name. You want to make sure the people who hurt you don't walk away thinking they won. But listen to me. When you try to play God, you lose. When you try to be the judge, jury, and executioner, you step out of alignment with divine justice. Here's the kicker. God can handle them far better than you ever could. You might be able to hurt their feelings, damage their reputation, or even cause them temporary discomfort, but when God moves, he dismantles everything they built on lies. He exposes what was done in the dark. Yeah. He humbles the proud, he silences the arrogant. And when he brings justice, it's undeniable. Look at the story of Pharaoh. He enslaved the Israelites, treated them like dirt, and thought he could keep getting away with it. For years, it looked like nothing was going to change. People suffered, they cried out, but Pharaoh still had power. Some of them probably thought, where's God? Why is he letting this happen? But what happened? When God decided to move, Pharaoh, one of the most powerful rulers in history, was reduced to nothing. Egypt, the strongest empire of its time, was brought to its knees. And it didn't happen because Moses tried to take matters into his own hands. It happened because God fought the battle. See, when you try to get revenge, you limit the outcome to what you can do. But when you let God handle it, he does things you never saw coming. He doesn't just settle the score, he flips the entire game. Now let's talk about timing, because this is where people struggle. Some of you are sitting there wondering why the people who hurt you still seem to be thriving. They lied about you, but their reputation is still intact. They stabbed you in the back, but they're still doing well. They tried to ruin you, but they're still walking around with a smile. And it's frustrating, isn't it? You're thinking, where's the justice? Why hasn't God done anything yet? Let me tell you why. Because God's justice doesn't operate on your schedule. See, God lets some people rise for a season just to make their fall even greater. He allows them to think they've won, just so he can make an example out of them. He gives them time to change, time to repent, time to make things right. But when they refuse, the fall is inevitable. Think about Haman in the book of Esther. He was a wicked man who plotted to destroy God's people. And for a while, it looked like he was winning. He had the king's favor. He had power. He had wealth. But what happened? The very gallows he built to hang Mordecai were the ones he was hanged on. That's what happens when you leave vengeance in God's hands. He turns the enemy's own weapons against them. So what's your job in all this? Your job is to let go. Your job is to rise above it. Your trials are tests. Listen to me. Every hardship, every betrayal, every injustice you face is not just an attack. It's a test. And how you handle that test determines whether you move forward or stay stuck. Most people don't get this. They go through life thinking every challenge is just bad luck. Every betrayal is just unfortunate. And every setback is just another reason to give up. But what they don't realize is that nothing happens by accident. Every single thing that has come against you had to go through God first. He saw it coming before you did, and he allowed it, not to destroy you, but to develop you. Let's be real. If everything in life was easy, you'd never grow, you'd never become stronger, you'd never reach your full potential. The truth is, the people who have the greatest success, the biggest impact, and the most unshakable faith are the ones who have been through something. They've been tested, they've been refined, they've been pushed to their limits. Look at Joseph. Here's a guy who had a dream, a vision from God that he was going to be a ruler. But instead of going straight to the throne, what happened? He was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and locked in prison for years. Years. If anyone had a reason to be bitter, angry, or broken, it was him. But he didn't let the trial define him. He let it refine him. And because he passed the test, he stayed faithful through the hardship, God elevated him from the prison to the palace. Now let me ask you, how are you handling your tests? Are you letting them break you, or are you letting them build you? Are you spending your time complaining about how unfair life is, or are you using every trial as fuel to rise higher? Understand this. God does not promote people who fail their tests. If you can't handle betrayal at one level, you won't survive at the next. If you crumble every time someone talks about you, you're not ready for greatness. If you let bitterness consume you, you disqualify yourself from the blessing. Every major step forward in your life will come after a test. Maybe right now you're dealing with a test of patience. Things aren't moving as fast as you want, and you're wondering if God even sees you. Maybe it's a test of forgiveness. Someone hurt you deeply, and you're struggling to let it go. Or maybe it's a test of faith. Everything looks like it's falling apart, and you don't know if you can hold on any longer. But listen, God is watching how you respond. Will you trust him, or will you give up? Will you stay faithful, or will you let bitterness take root? Because if you pass the test, promotion is coming. God never wastes pain. He never allows a storm unless there's something greater on the other side of it. Think of it like this. Gold is refined in fire. Diamonds are made under pressure. Warriors are trained in battle. You don't become strong by living an easy life. You become strong by enduring trials and refusing to quit. So stop asking why things are happening to you and start asking what God is trying to teach you. Instead of saying, why me? Start saying, what's next? Because if you handle this right, if you keep your head up, if you refuse to let the enemy break you, you'll come out of this season stronger, wiser, and more unstoppable than ever before. Blessing through opposition, let's get something straight. Your opposition is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It's a sign that he's setting you up for something greater. Every challenge, every attack, every betrayal you faced was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to position you for the next level. Most people don't understand this. They think that when things go wrong, when people turn against them, when life gets tough, it must mean God is punishing them. But let me tell you something. Some of your greatest blessings will come disguised as opposition. Some of your biggest breakthroughs will come through the very things that were meant to break you. Look at David. He was just a shepherd boy, forgotten by his own family. But when did he step into his destiny? Not when things were easy, not when people were cheering him on, but when he faced Goliath. His opposition was his gateway to greatness. Without Goliath, David would have just been another shepherd in the fields. But because he faced and conquered opposition, he became a warrior, a leader, and eventually a king. Now, some of you are facing giants in your own life. Maybe it's a boss who's against you, a business deal that fell through, people who are slandering your name, or even close friends and family who don't believe in you. And you're sitting there wondering, why is this happening? Why do I always have to fight for everything? I'll tell you why. Because God is preparing you. He's building something in you that you'll need for the next season of your life. You don't grow through comfort. You grow through resistance. Think about Joseph. He had a dream that he would be a ruler. But did he step straight into that blessing? No. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and thrown into prison. For years, it looked like everything was going against him. But what Joseph didn't realize at the time was that every attack was positioning. The betrayal put him in Egypt. That foil put him in Egypt. The false accusation put him in prison, and it was in that prison that he met the person who would eventually introduce him to Pharaoh. And in one moment, he went from prisoner to prime minister. That's what God does. He uses opposition to open doors that you never even knew existed. Let me ask you, how are you handling your opposition? Are you letting it make you bitter, or are you letting it make you better? Are you spending all your time complaining about the people who hurt you? Or are you staying focused on the bigger picture? Because here's the truth. If you don't learn how to handle adversity, you'll never be ready for your destiny. Some of the people who hurt you, some of the doors that closed on you, some of the setbacks that frustrated you, those weren't rejections. Those were redirections. Those were God moving you out of places you didn't belong, keeping you away from people who couldn't go where he was taking you. Instead of asking why opposition is coming against you, start asking what God is preparing you for. Because if you refuse to quit, if you refuse to let bitterness take root, if you stay faithful even when it's hard, you'll look back and realize that everything that came against you actually pushed you toward your blessing. God doesn't allow opposition to break you. He allows it to build you, to position you, and to prepare you. So don't fight the process. Trust it. Because on the other side of this battle is a blessing so great that even your enemies will have to sit back and watch as God elevates you right in front of them. Your enemies will witness your elevation. Let me tell you something. When God moves in your life, he doesn't do it in secret. He makes it public. He prepares a table for you. And guess what? He doesn't just invite your friends. He makes sure your enemies have front row seats. See, some of you have been lied about. Some of you have been betrayed. Some of you have been counted out by people who thought they had the final say in your life. But let me remind you, they do not have the final say. God does. When he decides to bless you, there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. Let's talk about Joseph again. His own brothers sold him into slavery. They thought they were done with him. They thought they had erased him from their lives. Years later, when famine hit, who did they have to come to for help? Joseph. The same man they threw away was now the one in charge of their survival. And what did he do? He didn't seek revenge. He didn't gloat. He simply stood in the place of power that God had placed him in. That's what God does. He doesn't just restore you in private. He elevates you in front of those who tried to destroy you. He makes sure the very people who doubted you have to watch as he blesses you. Think about David again. All the kings spent years trying to kill him. He threw spears at him. He hunted him down like an animal. But when the time was right, God removed Saul and placed David on the throne. And David didn't have to manipulate, scheme, or force his way into power. He just stayed faithful. And when the moment came, his enemies had no choice but to watch as he walked into his destiny. Now, let me bring this to you. Some of you are in a season where people have counted you out. Maybe you lost your job unfairly. Maybe someone spread lies about you. Maybe certain people have tried to block your progress at every turn. And you're sitting there wondering, God, when will justice come? Listen to me. God is setting the stage. He is preparing your elevation. When the moment comes, it won't be small. It won't be hidden. It will be undeniable. See, when God blesses you, he makes sure everyone knows it was him. He does it in such a way that even your enemies have to admit, only God could have done this. He lifts you up so high that the people who tried to bury won't even be able to deny what he's done. Now here's the challenge. Don't get bitter in the process. When the elevation comes, don't waste time trying to prove a point to your enemies. You don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to rub it in their faces. Just walk in the blessing and let your success be the loudest statement. Because trust me, they'll see it. The people who said you wouldn't make it, they'll see it. The people who laughed at you, they'll see it. The people who tried to stop you, they'll have to watch as God lifts you higher than they ever imagined. So stop worrying about when it's going to happen and start preparing for what's coming. Because your elevation is not a maybe. It's a guarantee. And when God does it, no one can take the credit, boo. And so I leave you with this. Stop worrying about those who have hurt you. Stop wasting your energy trying to fight battles that aren't yours to fight. God saw it. God knows what they did. And God has already written the ending to your story. Every trial you faced, every betrayal you've endured, every setback you've overcome wasn't for nothing. It was a setup for something greater. The people who tried to break you only pushed you closer to your destiny. The obstacles that tried to block you only strengthened you for the next level. And the pain you thought would destroy you is the very thing God is using to elevate you. So stand tall. Keep moving forward. Keep trusting that God's justice is greater than anything you could ever do on your own. Because when he steps in, when he lifts you up, when he prepares that table for you in the presence of your enemies, there will be no denying it. And in that moment, you won't even need to say a word. Your victory will speak for itself. Now go forward with confidence. Go forward with faith. Yeah, because your story isn't over. Your best chapter is just about to begin.